Hello and welcome to Why Not Wednesday. Today we are so excited to have one of those coaches who said, yes, I am that coach. So today we're going to introduce to you Sonya Shelton, who is one of our WHY.os Certified Coaches and who's joined us very recently. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She is the CEO of Executive Leadership Consulting and the author of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, You're an Executive, but Are You a Leader? She and her team work with executives and business owners to align their strategy and culture to achieve exponential growth. And I posted about that because I'm like, anytime you mention exponential growth, I know we're going to get viewers. So, Sonia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dan. I'm excited to be here.
We're so glad to have you. So I always start with that basic question everybody wants to know. What is your WHY.os, Sonia? Share it with us.
Absolutely. So my why is contribute. And what that means is I contribute to the success of others, and I really like to have an impact. And my how is better way, which means I like to find better ways of doing things and sharing those with others. And my what is simplify, which means that I find that better way and then bring simple solutions.
Got it. So tell me, how does that apply? So how does that apply to the work that you do? Because your mission is to align strategy and culture. So how does your WHY.os fit into aligning strategy and culture?
Yeah, I think partially it's my WHY.os that helps to contribute, but it's also just having the WHY.os as a coach
Mhm.
also helps contribute, right? So here I say contribute because it's on my why, right?
Yeah,
so so really for me personally, it's looking. I know that executives, leaders, organizations
right.
can really get that exponential growth like you said in my introduction, if they get everybody working together towards that
Mhm.
common strategy. So a lot of executives will say their biggest struggle is getting their strategy. They know what they want to do, they have that strategy in mind, but they're not executing as fast as they would like to. They can't get people on the same page or moving in the same direction. And so through my why, I
Right.
want to contribute to that. I want to see them be successful. And so
Mhm.
I work with organizations to say, how do we find a better way to get you to where you want to go and make it really simple so that everybody understands where we're going and how we're going to get there, right? So I look at how my WHY.os contributes to those organizations, but also how we as an organization contribute to them as well.
So you have a great headline on your webpage, or you talk about, you believe that, or a lot of people believe that strategy eats, or culture eats strategy for breakfast, but you have a different take on that. Tell us what that take is.
Yeah, there's the famous quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and we don't agree with that. We think that they have to eat breakfast together. So
Mhm.
in order to, some companies will focus on the strategy,
Right.
like over focus on the strategy and not really pay much attention to the culture. So it's like results at all costs. And then other organizations will focus on the culture and maybe overemphasize the culture or really not understand what culture is.
Right.
And so they're not leveraging culture to its full power to be able to get to that strategy. And when you
Right.
put them together and they do eat breakfast together, that's where those exponential results can come in.
So it's not cannibalism, it's eating together but not eating each other, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
I love that. And so one of the things that you talk about too, that I absolutely love, you talk about one vision, one voice, one direction. So how do you help companies? Because that's what you do. You help companies do that, come up with that one vision, one voice, one direction. I know you can't tell us everything, but what is it that you start with to help them get there?
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to alignment.
Mm,
So the one vision, one voice, one direction is all about getting everything moving in the same direction. So
right.
in order to do that, you have to know where you're going. So what is that vision? What is it? Not just their purpose, or as we see, their YOS to us is their purpose,
Right.
but also what is it? How do you take that vision? Where do you want to go with it? And
Mm,
make sure that everybody understands that. So that's the one voice. So
right.
are we all on board with that vision? Are we using it in our communications? Are we telling the stories of how it's coming to life or what it'll look like when we get there? And then One Direction is really about lining up everything else in the organization, from the strategy, the processes, the structure, the culture. Everything is moving in that same direction to achieve that vision.
So you talk about everybody has to know what the vision is. And then when you say one voice, so everybody has to be telling the same stories, right? Because
Right.
if they have to interpret the story the same way. And then when you talk about direction, it's more about the infrastructure. Is everything that you're doing pointing in the same direction? Did I get it right?
Yeah. And one of the tricks that I do, whenever I'm doing a speaking engagement, or I'm meeting with a client, I'll ask people that I meet, so
Mm,
if you could articulate the vision of the organization in your own words, what would you say? And I usually try to ask at least 5 people and see
right.
if it's relatively the same. Of course, if they're using their authentic voice, the
Yeah.
words might be different, but are they all basically saying the same thing?
Right. And so that's a great check. So you do that a couple of days before you actually meet with the team, or
Yeah. Hmm.
so you're that consultant that comes in and spends a few days getting to know people and learning a little bit about what's really going on.
Right. Exactly.
I
Exactly.
love that. So why did you become a WHY.os certified coach? You seem to have a thriving practice. You've got a lot of good things that you're doing. So I met you almost, gosh, I want to say close to a year ago, about 7 or 8 months ago, and we started having a conversation. I shared with you our process. What made you say, you know what, that's something I want to add to my toolkit?
Yeah, I think it's on the 3 different levels. So I think when we're working with, executives, one of
Hmm.
the things that I talk about for them as a leader is, how can you how you're perceived be how you authentically are?
Mm,
Right? So we, would take them through a personal branding process, and when I saw the YOS, I was like, "Well, this is gonna shortcut what we were doing with personal branding," and I'm loving how it's showing up for our clients, because it's more than I thought. So yes, it's helping with their personal brand and how they're perceived, but we're also using it in how do they make decisions?
mhm.
How can they make decisions faster if they're aligned with their YOS? I just had a conversation with a client this morning who was saying, I was observing him in a meeting yesterday, and
Uh-huh.
it didn't go well. And I said, okay, well, let's see his why is makes sense. And I said, let's see what didn't make sense about what happened yesterday. Like,
Mhm.
why were you struggling with it? And it was just another way that he could use it and apply it. And so, yeah, so those are all the reasons. Then looking at, how can we apply it to a team? So we're all
Mhm.
about alignment. So how do
Right,
we get, teams aligned? And part of alignment is understanding each other and trusting each other,
right.
and understanding the why helps them to do that. And then
And so
obviously from the organization perspective, ultimately having the organization understand its why
mm.
is where we start with the vision and purpose.
So you hit that really well, and I like that you're talking about purpose. So we're gonna be doing some work on purpose. How do you align why and purpose? Because that's a question that everybody's like, well, is your why your purpose, or is your why what helps you get to your purpose? And my answer is always yes, because I think
Right.
it could be both, right? Depending on what you're doing. But tell us your answer, Sonia.
Yeah, I definitely think it's both. And I would say it is your purpose at its core,
Hmm.
right? So to me, my YOS is my purpose at its core. How I apply that might be how, like, what I do for a living, right? When I got my why my YOS, I was like, yeah, that makes sense, and I'm in the perfect job, right? So I'm able to contribute. I'm look for better ways with my clients. I'm able to simplify things so that they can take action, right? So could that why apply to different types of jobs? Sure, but I know at the core that's my purpose, and then I can apply it in different ways.
I like that. That's a great answer. I'm gonna gather as many of those as I can, because everybody's got a slightly. It's kind of like you said earlier, right? People will, when you ask people for the vision of the company, if they're using their authentic voice, they're gonna say it slightly different. But I think we all come back together around the fact that why and purpose are intimately tied to each other. Paul Epstein, who we're working with, says, you have your why, which leads to purpose, which leads to impact. Which I think it's kind of the trail that you take your clients through. Right? You figure out their why, you figure out their purpose, and then the impact, the contribution that you make to their company is how you help them align with one vision, one voice, and one direction. Right?
Right, right.
So little known fact, Sonia has actually visited the Y Institute campus. She's been in Albuquerque. You have family in Albuquerque. You grew up in Santa Fe, so just north of us. I always want to know, what was your impression? You got to see Gary and myself. We met for a couple hours, had a great time. What was the experience like for you?
Yeah, I loved being with you and just seeing how you apply it in the way the Y Institute operates, right? Like, so you how you're organized, where your offices are, having your YOS on the door, and the campus is very inspiring. With each conference room has inspiring names, and I just felt like I was part of the team, being able to see you there on the campus and meet with you there. Like I felt like I was part of the team when I left.
I love that. Thank you, Sonia, for that. And any of our YOS coaches that are listening, anytime you're going to be in the Albuquerque area, just give us a call ahead of time. As you can imagine, we're a small but mighty team, so we want to make sure we make time for you. But we'd love to give you a tour of the campus, show you our offices, sit in one of those conference rooms, and then you get a chance to meet the founder and CEO, Gary, who just enjoys meeting people and sharing the vision and seeing his vision come alive in the coaches that are certified in our process. So thanks so much for visiting, Sonia. That we enjoyed visiting with you and learning more about what you're doing and how you're applying it. I mean, you took a while to get certified. I remember I said, Sonia signed up, and then I didn't see your progress for a while. But then in December you went hard, and then you got started, and now I don't think you've taken your foot off the pedal.
No, we made January our promotion for individual YOS and February's team. And yeah, we're getting it all to all of our clients. I gave it to all of my existing coaching clients, and it's really had an impact in the coaching.
Excellent, excellent. So how does your personal YOS, your why, your how, and your what show up in your coaching and consulting?
I would say, it shows up with making sure that I'm making an impact. So I see contribute as what can I do to contribute to results, right?
Right.
So focus on results. So I'm always looking at being very practical.
Mhm.
So again, my better way and simplify is
Right.
not just that big vision. And I think that as I see that a lot of people who are visionary sort of stay up there in the clouds.
Right.
But with my how and my what, which with better way and simplify, can really take that vision and land it and make it practical and all the way through to execution.
So what's the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself from now that you know your YOS? Because I think, as a coach and as a consultant, you live in this world, so you're pretty self-aware. What's different now that because you said it resonated with you and you said, I want to use this. What resonated with you? What is it that's different now that you know your YOS that you didn't have before?
I think there's a couple of things. One is I knew that I had a natural ability to simplify. So I started my career in journalism and then communications, and I've always had this ability to take a lot of complexity and drill it down to the 3 bullet points, right? And people are always amazed, like, how do you do that? And it just comes naturally to me. So
And it's
so
the right 3 bullet points. That's, I
right,
think, the gift, right?
right, right. And so just leaning into that more and recognizing that that's part of my superpower. And then I think the in Better Way, I have a funny story, a personal story
Yeah.
around Better Way, which is after I did my YOS. So my husband and I have been together for 26 years.
Okay.
And when I read the description and I was like, oh, he thinks, like, he's always said, oh, you never like my ideas. Like, whenever I come up with an idea, you always want to do it your way. And I was like, no, I
Right.
don't want to do it my way. And I was like, I do like your ideas. And I couldn't understand why he felt that way. And then when I read it, I explained it to him. I was like, oh, I did my YOS, and it's not that I don't like your ideas, but as soon as I hear your idea, my automatic response is, how can I make this better? And
Right.
so that means if you come back to me with an even better way, we'll go with that, right? And
Right.
so it just sort of helped him understand me a little bit more and see that it wasn't critical, So I think maybe that might be a good thing for other better ways out there to know that if it's, it might be perceived as being critical rather than looking for that better way. And having
Right.
that understanding, he was able to understand where I was coming from.
I love that example because it really is about a communication, right? So that's why I started the show asking you, okay, what does it mean? And I love how you did it. You said my why is to contribute, and what that means, and my how is better way, and what that means. Because when you let people know what it is that drives you, and then it allows you to be authentic, and it allows them to not feel defensive, because one of the things we say about better ways, they're often pleased but never satisfied. There's always a better way to do it, right? But when somebody's bringing you something they've worked really hard on for a long time, and they put it in front of you, and the first thing you say is really good, but let me show you how we can make it better. It doesn't feel like a compliment, right? It feels like, wow, nothing I ever bring to her is ever good enough. And so I think it's important to communicate that. And I'm glad that had. So how does he feel? Did he agree with the entire
Oh yeah.
assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Here's a question. Have you given it to him?
Not yet.
Not yet. So that was our Valentine's Day post. We asked people, how many of you have done it? Almost every couple that I've talked to that has done it tells us, oh my gosh, it changes the way we communicate
Mhm.
completely. And it helps us understand people a lot better. So thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about your why not moment. So the name of the show is Why Not Wednesday. What's been your biggest why not moment today?
Well, I think it was for sure when I started executive leadership consulting. So,
Yeah.
prior to starting the company, I was the head of internal communications for the Walt Disney Company.
Okay.
So I had, great company, amazing job, a lot of stability. Everywhere I would go, people would say, "Oh, you work for Disney, right?" Like
Right.
there's a little cachet that went with it. And I left to like jumped off the cliff to start my own company. And so it's definitely a why not moment. And
Yeah.
it also connects. I was thinking about this morning, thinking about the why not. It connects to my why because I felt like I could make a better contribution being outside of the structure than I could inside.
Hmm. So what made it a why not moment? Because I mean, Disney, right? It's like you're working for Disney, you've got an executive leadership position there. Um, what were some of the better ways that you saw that you couldn't implement? What was the trigger?
There were a couple of things. I was there in a very interesting time,
Hmm.
when the company ousted the CEO,
Mm,
shareholder revolt, right? So it was
yeah.
being led by a member of the Disney family, ousting Michael Eisner, who was this longtime CEO of the company. It was kind of like the company was going through a divorce, and
Mm,
being the head of internal communications at that time really impacted kind of how I saw the world.
yeah.
And I realized, consultants coming in, didn't matter what I would say. I would come up with ideas. The consultants that came in might have less experience than me, but they were always, it was always their ideas were brilliant. And
Right.
I kind of resented it at first, but then I realized like they have an outside perspective. They
Hmm.
have the perspective of bringing what other companies are doing and things like that to the table, and they can say things other people can't say inside the company, right?
Right.
Right. So
Right. They can be completely honest because their paycheck isn't on the line, right?
right, exactly, exactly. So people thought I was crazy at the time, but I said, "Why not? Let's give it a shot." And I could always go back and get another job if I needed to, but wanted to give it a shot in going out on my own.
I heard this recently, Sonia, and you'll probably resonate with it. I heard somebody, and there's a motivational speaker. I wish I could remember who it was, but he said, the thing about taking chances is, let's imagine you're going to ask a pretty girl out for dinner. Well, let's say she says no. You were going to eat dinner alone before you asked her, right? So you're still going to, if she says no, you're still going to eat dinner alone, but at least you took a shot and you learned, right? And you learned something from it. So that had to be a little bit of the mindset. You know what? I'm going to go try it because I can always do what I'm doing, but you're not ever going to know whether ELC is a viable venture. And now you've been in business for how long?
14 years.
14 years, going strong. And I appreciate the fact that even after 14 years of being successful and doing things at a high level, you were open to the opportunity to bring something new into your practice. So how did you learn about us? How did you learn about Y Institute? Tell us that story.
I was at a conference for the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches,
Yeah.
and we had Paul Allen as a speaker, and he was talking about the importance of purpose, and he mentioned having done his YOS, and like very briefly, he didn't describe it or anything, and then he mentioned Albuquerque, that he had gone to see you in Albuquerque, and it was like those two things sort of like, oh, there's an assessment to find your why, and they're in Albuquerque. I have to look them up.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, I took my discovery, and the rest was history, right?
Yeah, because I remember getting that phone call, getting on the phone with you, and you mentioned how it was. As a matter of fact, I think I was in Chicago at the time,
Mhm.
and I was traveling. But I said, I've got to take this phone call from Sonia. So we had a great initial conversation. So shout out to Paul Allen. Thank you for mentioning us. Yes, Paul was actually at the Y Institute campus, spent a full day with us. We had a great day learning from. He's helped quite a few small ventures go viral, right? He's
Right.
done some great work in his career. Most famous for ancestry.com currently, but he's done a lot of amazing work. So what are the tools? So there's a lot of tools that come with being YOS certified. How have you incorporated the tools, the teaching, and the mindset of why into your business? Because again, you had a really good structure already. So what gaps did we fill? What gaps are still there? Or what gaps were not there, but you realized maybe this could be better? So I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I think it was simplify, right? So
Mhm.
it was simplifying the process for us, in getting to the personal brand, and we in our model, we start with vision and purpose at the core.
Right.
And what we've how it's turned out in using it with clients is it's like the YOS has become that purpose at the core. So like I was mentioning the client earlier today, that there was an issue that happened, and I brought the core back and said, okay, well, how does this connect to your YOS?
Right.
And how can you see this through that lens? And it sort of opened up his ability to see, he was kind of beating himself up over it. And
Right.
his ability to say, oh, well, there were some things that didn't make sense, and I needed more information, and I needed to figure out how I could help it make sense for everybody. So we talked about starting with objectives and things like that. And so just seeing like even everything that comes up, that I can come back to that core of their why, and start there to figure out how they solve their problems.
So that practical application really, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
so what by the way, do you know his full YOS?
Yes, his full YOS is make sense, better way, contribute.
Okay. So you guys get along, right?
Yeah, we do.
So you connect. What I have found is people that share at least one of their top three get along well. If they share two, they get along really well. And if they share three, forget it. They're finishing each other's sentences. And I don't know if you've started to see that with the people you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. My longest client, we've been together for 10 years,
Mhm.
on various projects over the years, and she was the first person I had take it.
Yeah.
And so hers is contribute, better way, make sense. So it's not identical to mine, but it's
Mhm.
very close. So
I was just commenting, Kevin Martin and Lisa Schermerhorn, they practice together. They're both executive coaches, and their practice is about mindset. But they talk about all the time that they had spent months, 9 months, trying to figure out their website and what messaging they wanted to put out. And they took the YOS in December of 2020, and in like 1 week, their website was done because they both happen to be challenge, better way. He's contribute, and I think makes sense. So, but they share their top two, so they get along great, and their messaging was simple because they wanted to talk about challenging people, finding better ways, and then ultimately contributing and making sense. And they were able to do that in a week after working for 9 months. So it really does resonate with people. So tell me about, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit with your husband. How has discovering your YOS impacted you personally?
I think personally, it's helping me make decisions,
Yeah.
right? And how for contributes, you know this, Dan, right? Like sometimes we want to take on everything. We want to contribute. Everybody
Right.
needs help. I'm known for somebody who's willing to help. Everyone will ask me for help, right?
Right.
So thinking about how can I make the biggest impact, right? I think Gary talks about this in one of the videos, right? So looking at it as a contribute, I know I want to make an impact. I don't necessarily need to do everything, and I can focus on a few things that will make the biggest impact. So it's also, again, looking at my better way and how can I simplify things or come with simple solutions to be able to contribute without wearing myself out.
Yeah. Well, and that's so true, because what we'll do is we will try to do everything for everyone, and we spread ourselves so thin that we're not making a difference really anywhere, right?
Right.
If we give in to our urges as contributes to say yes, 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 and instead, one of my early mentors had taught me, he said, Dan, make a big impact in a few places versus a little impact in a lot of places. And that's hard. I don't know about you, Sonia, but one of the things that I have found is people are almost offended that you say no because they're so used to you saying yes. And it's like, well, when did you become a jerk? And I'm like, no, I'm not a jerk. I just stopped spreading myself thin at my expense for everybody else's good, which wasn't good for anybody because none of them were getting your best, right?
Right. Well, and I think how I've extended it a little bit even more is to say what resources do I have that I can direct them to, right? So
Yeah,
I'm somebody as a contribute, I'm somebody that has a big network. I like to
right.
help people and connect with people. So there's usually somebody I can find I can direct them to that can help them.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. And I think that's a great way. The other thing that I've learned is to say, let me think about it, because we get approached about a lot of things, right? Because people know we're likely to say yes. So they approach us. And so one of the things I've learned to do again from Jamie Duragi was say, let me think about it. And that gives you time to come back and say, you know what, I've thought about it and I can't help you, but here are 2 or 3 people that I think would be good for that. And then it helps you put them through your filter. Is it a better way? Does it contribute to the success of others? Does it make sense? Or does it challenge the status quo? Whatever it is that your YOS is, you kind of put it through that filter. And I think you talked about doing that with your executive friend. So Sonia, we're almost out of time. We always love to end with this question. If you knew someone who was considering becoming a WHY.os certified coach and adding this tool to what they do, what would you say to them to encourage them, or what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say it really helps your clients bring some self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you talk about at the Y Institute, you talk about YOS being your superpower. And I really have seen that with clients that that helps them connect to who they authentically are. And then they can lead from there, right? So it helps, like
Right.
as I mentioned, it helps them make decisions. It helps them show up authentically, and they get excited about it, and they realize how much value they're providing through their YOS. So yeah, I would say it really is helpful for coaching.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sonia. We've enjoyed having you. We've enjoyed having you in Albuquerque. I hope we get a ton of people that are going to be driving through or flying through. If you're at a layover, maybe we can meet at the airport. I don't even know what they're doing at the airports nowadays, Sonia. You've flown recently more than I have, but we want to be able to see your faces. Come by and visit us. I know a lot of our coaches either tune in live or watch the recording. So if you're watching this, we want to see you in Albuquerque. Thank you for being with us today, Sonia, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Dan. You too.